In today's macro photography tutorial, we've got a really interesting subject to sink our teeth into, and that is shark's teeth, fossilized shark's teeth. We're going to be taking a really close-up look at what these guys look like under the macro lens using super magnification to take a look at whatever detail there might be. Stick around and I'll get started in just a sec. Hi guys, I'm Ben from Adaptalux and welcome back to another macro photography tutorial where today we are taking a look at shark's teeth. Now, I know that's not a very common subject that you're going to have lying around your house that you can just pick up and shoot, but I do have some. I recently cleared out one of my storage cupboards and I found this little glasses case, and I thought that's a bit strange. Why have I got that in storage? Well, it's because it's full of these fossilized shark's teeth. I found these when I was diving off the coast of Florida. They're really surprisingly common, hidden just underneath the sand, and with just a flick of the hand on the seabed, it reveals all of these teeth that have been sat there for potentially decades, ready for them to be found by divers, and there's so many that you can just grab a few and take them home. But these ones are fossilized, so you'd imagine a shark's teeth probably white with lots of jagged spikes along the edges. These ones have been underwater for quite a while, so they're mostly black and dark in color. They've still got a nice shine to them, and you can still, if you look very closely, make out the jagged spikes on the edges of the teeth, even though they've potentially been erased and worn down by erosion for some time. But we're going to take an even closer look than I can with my naked eye and see if we can't still see that sort of nasty jagged edge on the teeth and whatever other detail might be hidden on these little curiosities. My shark's teeth are pretty small, so the first thing that I'm going to need is a way to hold them in front of my camera. I don't want to shoot directly onto my table because I'll be leaving a lot of shadows where the tooth is making contact with the table. So I'm going to hold them up using my macro subject holder, which is this strange little contraption here. It sits down on your table and has these flexible arms with crocodile clips at the end of each arm. That means that I can position my teeth in the crocodile clips and move them around in front of the camera to get different angles. This is a really handy piece of equipment. We do give this away on our monthly macro challenges, one of which started just yesterday, so go and check that out. But if you've got small subjects that you need to hold, you can use one of these or something similar to get them nice and steady in front of the lens. My lens today is not a conventional one. I've got some extension tubes here which are adjustable, so I can extend those even further. And on the front of that, I'm going to be putting a reversed lens. So this is an old manual 28mm Tachyna lens. So this has got an aperture ring, which is really handy, and you can actually change the aperture even when it's not attached to a camera. So that's very useful. And the way that we're going to attach this is by using one of these little reversing rings. This is just a piece of metal that screws onto the filter thread on the front of your lens, and then it's able to mount backwards. So I'm going to mount this on the front of my extension tubes, but I'm actually screwing in the front of the lens to the camera. This is going to reverse the purpose of the lens. So the 28mm lens is going to become a macro lens, and it's going to give me a lot of magnification. This is going to get really, really close, mostly because of these extension tubes, but it's a really cheap and effective way of getting a lot of magnification without having to buy a dedicated macro lens. One problem with a setup like this is that it's going to require a lot of light. As you get closer and increase your magnification factor, your depth of field is going to suffer. Your depth of field being how much of your image is in focus at once. We can compensate and change our depth of field by changing our aperture. And because I've got a manual aperture ring on my lens, I can still do that with this setup. Changing your aperture not only affects your depth of field, but also your exposure. So if you want to get more of your image in focus, you're going to have to deal with having a lot less light reach your camera. Closing down your aperture all the way will make your image that little bit sharper, but you're going to need to add additional light, especially with a setup like this. If I'm adding my additional light, it's going to be with the Adaptalux Studio. I've mounted my control pod here on top of a mini tripod, and I'm going to be plugging in some lighting arms. This is the Lighting Arm S, our most powerful version of our white lighting arm, and I can already see that that's putting a lot of light down onto my tooth. It's looking a little bit harsh though, so I might add a diffuser just to soften that light a little bit. It's still getting a lot of light onto my subject, and I might add a second arm as well. But let's take a look at what the edges of our tooth are looking like. So check it out, guys. We've got my shark's tooth here framed up in the camera. My extension tubes are extended all of the way for maximum magnification, and then we've got two lighting arm S's with diffusers pointing at my shark's tooth, which is held by my macro subject holder. My subject holder is also holding this black backdrop as well, because back in the rear of my room there is a window that was letting in a lot of light and leaving my subject with this strange glow behind it, which I didn't really like. So that's really handy, not only for holding your subjects, but also holding a background as well. Now, one other issue with this setup is that it's very unstable. You can see that as I shift my weight around, my subject is actually changing focus and doing all sorts of crazy things, moving around it in the frame. So you do need to try and be as steady as possible. I do have a macro focus rail here and a shutter release cable to try and adjust and compensate for that as much as possible and take my photographs without shaking the camera, but we'll have to see whether I can get a stack this close up without moving things too much. Having a super high magnification factor like this can be really finicky and takes a lot of adjustment, but it does reveal a huge amount of detail which is required for our shark's teeth. Looking at them with the naked eye, you can't really see that there's much going on there. You can sometimes feel that there's a little sharp edge there still, but you wouldn't realize necessarily that it's actually made up of tiny little spines. Teeth upon teeth on the edge of these teeth. So we've got a lot of magnification here, and we can actually see every single tiny little spine along the edge of the tooth. There's also a lot of detail where the main part of the tooth joins the part where the gums would hold the tooth in. I'm not a tooth expert nor a shark expert, so somebody please let me know down in the comments what all of these different parts of the tooth are called. But they're certainly very interesting to look at, especially super close up. Investigating the details on my teeth is very, very interesting. I've even still got some with sand and barnacles and things attached to them, which is equally interesting to take a look at. It does still require some focus stacking though. I was trying to see if I could get my aperture to be small enough and get enough light down onto here to take a shot without needing to stack. But even with my aperture at its minimum, I still can't get enough of these teeth in focus. We're talking maybe 1/10 of a millimeter maybe in focus at a time, so that's going to give us maybe a nice line across the ridges of the teeth, but as soon as you get up onto the curved part of the tooth, you're starting to lose a lot of detail, and there is a lot of detail hiding on these teeth. There's little scratches and nicks perhaps from the time when the shark was using these, but there's a lot to see on these relatively uninteresting fossils. I bet there's a lot more interesting things that you could find fossilized and get some really cool shots with. So let me know down below if you know of any particularly interesting types of fossils that would be really cool to shoot up close like this. Now, I did want to give you a sense of scale on how big these teeth actually are. So I've taken a shot just with it on my finger, and you can see actually my fingerprint in the background there. That's how close we're getting. I've had a lot of fun shooting my fossilized shark's teeth today. I wasn't expecting there to be quite as much detail left on these as there is. I thought more of it would have been lost to time, but I'm not an expert on teeth or sharks or fossils, so let me know down in the comments if there are any other types of fossils or teeth that you would like me to shoot. Especially under a high magnification factor like this, we can draw out a lot of detail. If you did enjoy my shoot today and my photos of these fossilized shark's teeth, let me know by hitting the like button, and make sure to subscribe for more macro photography tutorials, ideas and inspiration coming in the future. For now, that's all that I've got time for. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.